So we called the Putney Selectboard meeting to order at 5:32. It is being recorded. Just a reminder to everybody, we ask you to stay muted, and if you would like to speak, you can type a message into the message box, and both Karen and I try to keep an eye on that, and we can give you an opportunity to speak at different points on the agenda. So do we have any adjustments to the agenda this evening, Karen?
So Laura, I'd like to make just one adjustment.
Okay.
Can we put the emerald ash borer item as B underneath next stage arts project? Because I know we have people here.
For the emerald ash borer?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have people here for the NAACP as well, so I question reordering that. Is there time constraints for folks, or?
Well, can I ask what the emerald ash borer is? Are you looking for an update?
I was hoping that we could have an update. I know that it's hit Westminster, at least according to that national map. And so I was just curious as to.
Yeah. So Tom Hinckley is here to answer questions if specifically to emerald ash borer.
Okay. Tom, are you on a serious time frame?
Whoops,
Can I
talk? Well,
yes, please do.
I need to walk my dog soon. I can give a very brief report.
Okay. And the NAACP, are you comfortable with that change in agenda order?
I'm fine with that. How far back does that put us, just for a time reference?
Just to third, but we have a very short select board items agenda today,
nope.
So
we're totally willing to accommodate that.
Okay, thank you for your willingness to accommodate. All right, so we are going to shift the emerald ash borer to B, and the Windham County NAACP will be C. And that's it for adjustments?
Yes.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to approve the minutes for July 15th?
So moved.
And seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm abstaining because I was unable to attend that meeting. It has passed, though. Is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? I can't open the chat for some reason. Karen, can you? My computer's not playing nice.
Yeah. So just messages from Tom.
Yeah, nothing there that would indicate it.
Right.
I have I'm clicking on it and getting nothing. So maybe it'll cooperate in a minute. Oh, here it goes. All right. Hopefully it'll stay open. I will be able to. Now I don't see any of you.
Technology.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, you all just came back. Okay, great. Excellent. So if anybody has a comment to make at this point, this would be the time to make it, if it's on something that's not on the agenda. And while we're waiting for folks to respond to that, I just want to open up with a statement. Last week, our community woke up to the words BLM is racist written on our main street. It also happened in other communities throughout southern Vermont. My understanding is 4 to be exact. There's many theories kicking around regarding who may have done this and why. I personally am not subscribing to any of them until there is clear evidence. My concern is that we as a town continue to do the work of addressing bias and racism within our systems, policies, procedures, and staff as we have been doing with the Equity and Inclusion Committee. I'm also concerned with supporting those that are impacted by racism. And because of that, I shared words as someone that was elected to the role of Select Board Chair, but not as a representative of the entire Select Board or town. I shared those words immediately following the incident. It was a fairly long post on social media, and I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. I want to share the gist of it, though. I did open the statement with, the following statement is mine alone and does not necessarily represent the views of the town or the Select Board. I did edit the statement a few times to add clarity, though the body was not edited in any way that would change the facts of what I shared. And in a nutshell, I said I shared a quote that had been shared with me. There are a lot of folks that don't want to see more Black people in this community, and they want to see you voted out for pushing this meaning the Equity and Inclusion Committee. I shared that was what I had thought of as I was driving over those words spray painted on our main street, and that is a piece of why, in my experience, is why I was not at all shocked to see that on the road, though saddened. I shared that our town, like every other in America, has a lot of work to do, and then I shared some actions that I thought people could do. I also shared that our town had already reached out to the state road crew to get the words removed, and followed up with positive actions that could be taken by individuals, supporting the Putney and Equity and Inclusion Committee, donating to local groups that are doing the work, like the Root Social Justice Center and the Windham County NAACP, some books and podcasts that could be listened to or read, writing letters to the editor in support of Black lives, and having the hard conversations with the people in our life. I also thank whoever tried to cover the racism with a heart. I recognize that none of us should be out there spray painting public property without permission. And I support that person in their action, whatever consequences may come of it. Attached to that statement was a picture that said, I say Black Lives Matter because all did not cover Black men when they said all men are created equal. I say Black Lives Matter because all didn't cover Black when they said with liberty and justice for all. I say Black Lives Matter because they're still struggling with the definition of all. I know that it makes many people uncomfortable when I publicly speak opinion under my elected title, and I am willing to live with the consequences of that. The Putney voters should vote me out in March if they do not feel that my statement was professional or representative of who they want in office. I also want to create a space for this board to sanction me if they feel that my words are deserving of such an action. I speak with the understanding that there are consequences for the choices I make, and I'm fully prepared to accept those consequences. As John Lewis once said, sometimes we have a moral imperative to invite good trouble, and I am hopeful that by inviting good trouble in future generations, we will not have to continue this conversation. And I see that there is nobody in the chat that has any other comment. I do want to give space to the Select Board to respond to me in any way at this point.
I guess I would say that I think, although I agree with your statements and sentiments, I think that when you are representing yourself on a social media page that is labeled Putney Select Board Chair, you are definitely going outside the bounds of personal opinion the fact that you had to preface the statement by saying this is my own opinion and it does not reflect the select board opinion, or may not reflect the select board opinion, which I think it largely does. But I guess I would have sort of taken that as a red flag to say, maybe this isn't the place for this. And I don't want to, I don't want to sanction you. I don't want to criticize you for doing this, but I do think that those consequences that you're referring to, you have to keep those in mind, that you are representing everybody in Putney in everything you say as select board chair, and that there are risks in that. So, but I certainly don't disagree. So
I appreciate that, and I do take that into consideration, and at this point it just felt needed. And okay, David, I want to give you space as well.
I feel fundamentally, so I feel very similar to what Josh has already said. And I guess part of the issue for me is that I'm so new to public service in any way, and I don't really understand the bounds of what's public and what's private, and where's the line? Where does my opinion belong, and where does, when I'm representing everybody in Putney, where does what I'm saying represent them? I'm not sure where those lines are, but this definitely feels like things got crossed there. I think your heart's in the right place. I've never doubted that. I don't know if this is the way to express your opinion. I'm not sure of it. I know that reading it, the first question that came to mind to me was, well, I'm not sure I feel exactly the same way, but it looks like you're representing the select board in that spot, even with the statement you said. So, because the nature of what was said in that kind of speaks for itself. Nature of the I can't think of the thread, speaks for itself. And so I'm not exactly sure what to say besides that. I think we need to be very careful. I understand you're motivated by your passions like all people are. But I think we need to be very careful about how we proceed so we don't create more problems, so we actually solve them. That's it. That's all I got.
Thank you. Does anyone from the public want to make a comment on that?
I do.
I will give. Okay.
So I'm wondering.
Stefan, would you just state your name?
Yes, my name is Stefan Gillum. I am president of the Windham County NAACP. I don't have much comment here, but I think I'd rather pose a question to the select board here in Putney, and it is, well, what do you represent? And the reason I ask that is because I think it's a valid question that us as citizens should be able to ask our actual government and the officials that are governing us, right? I think that we can get so caught up in policy, and this is not a personal attack, by the way, this is just a statement, that we can get so caught up in personal policy and nuance that is perpetuated by that policy that we cripple ourselves as a government. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening here because we have not made any decisions, but that was a question that came to my mind as I heard this short conversation just now. Being, wrapped into many towns within Windham County, I've seen lots of select board members expressing their opinions. I just saw one a couple days ago talking about how much they thought how good of a job they thought the police force did. But yet, ironically, I never hear these same statements being made to people who support the structures that we have in place. And I want to know why that is. Now, I'm not saying that y'all have the answer for that, But what I'm saying is that I think these are questions that are legitimate and that I think we should think hard and long about when we say that we stand for one thing, but our actions say something else or are just non-action. To me, if I see non-action, the first thing I think about and the first thing I say is, well, what do you represent? So for me, at least I know where the select board member that supports the police officers stands. It was their right to say it. It also helps me strategize as a human being trying to live in the structures that I'm moving within. I would also say that I would love to know more about where y'all stand, because I'm having a hard time figuring it out based on the language that I'm hearing. And I would inspire some bravery in this moment, and hopefully we have a safe enough space for that to be known so that we can know exactly where we're going and how we're going to move forward. Thank you.
Would anyone on the select board like to respond to that? Okay. Hearing no responses, Keith Marks would like to say something. Keith, are you able to unmute?
Yes, I'm unmuted. Thank you. I'm really here to talk about water. I didn't realize this conversation would come up, but I do feel it is something to bring up is that right now, Next Stage, I'm the executive director at Next Stage. We are in the middle of reading White Rage by Dr. Carol Anderson. We just had our first meeting, and I will say that there's a history inside institutions of power that have created the formalities that we are currently existing in. And these are unusual times. And I think that it is up to people who have voices in positions of power to communicate what is just and what is right, and create the direction that these institutions will move into the future. And to stay on the sidelines and stay silent because of protocol and decorum kind of perpetuate where we are right now. And Next Stage is also I'm wrestling with how I use my position as a leader of this arts organization to make more room for more diversity, equity, and inclusion, both in my programming, on my board, on my staff. And so I just wanted to articulate that as somebody in the community, as somebody who's new to the community, leading an organization here, I echo Stefan's question about, if you say nothing, you are complicit in perpetuating a stance that allows people to spray paint graffiti on the roads without a society that really questions that. And so that's just my statement. So Laura, thank you. I appreciate the floor.
Yeah. Would anybody on the select board like to respond to that?
I guess I have been on the select board for a long time, as people know, and I agree with the statement Keith just made, and again, personally, I agree with Laura's statements, but I do feel that I have always thought of my select board role as being as apolitical as possible. Does that it creates conflict for me in the way that you, Keith, have just pointed out, and that Stefan is questioning. What are our beliefs? What are our goals? I think that for me, our most important role on the select board is running the town of Putney and not being a political body. I think the challenge is, where does silence become political? and what is our responsibility in that. And I honestly have never encountered this in my role on the select board before. And so I'm vocal in my personal life. I'm vocal in the rest of my life about my beliefs. I don't know, and this is causing me to question this, whether being on the select board should be a role in which one involves themselves in politics. And I don't know. This is so blurred by the reality in the world we're in right now of what's politics, what's personal, what's legal, what's ethical and moral, that's a complicated question. And I guess I would defer almost to statute, and I can't say that I've done the homework on this, as to whether select boards should be making political statements. And I honestly don't know the answer to that. I think that in voting for the Equity and Inclusion Committee, I think that in itself is a statement to say that we believe this is important. But how deep into the politics do we go in our role as select people? And I don't have a good answer for you on that. And I wish I had a better answer, and I will try and do some homework on it so that I have a better answer. But it's a conflict, because really we're here to run the town, and we represent absolutely everybody in the town, regardless of their beliefs. And that doesn't mean that their beliefs are in alignment with ours and or that they're, in our opinion, appropriate, but they are still tax-paying members of our constituency, and we're running a town for them. So that's complicated. And again, I will try and do some homework to understand it better, but it's not simple stuff. And so, Stefan, I think my answer to your question would be, we represent the town and the best interests of the town, but I can't tell you exactly at any given moment what that definitely means all the time. Our personal beliefs are very separate in some ways, I think, than our select board roles.
I'd like to say something.
Hold on. I'm sorry, Liz. We have somebody in the queue that would like to speak. And I'm going to say that as important as this conversation is, respecting everybody's time is also important to me. So I'm going to give this until 6 o'clock, and then we're going to move on to other issues. That's 5 more minutes. So Robin would like to speak, and Liz would like to speak. I'm going to divide the time between the two of them. Robin, can you unmute?
I did. Thank you, Laura. I'll be very brief. And I also am here for water and sewer with Keith, and was unaware that this comment would come up. But I did want to thank you for making your statement. And I think that the public is entitled to know what their elected officials stand for on matters that affect the town. I would want to be able to ask my select board members or my senators what their position is regarding issues that are important to running the town. And it can get uncomfortable. And I agree with Josh, all of us folks are volunteers. We're not so very well educated in everything that is right or wrong, or what you can do or can't do. I would only say that the Secretary of State's office and the Vermont League of Cities and Towns are resources. This is a very important topic right now, and perhaps those two places can provide some guidance regarding the positions of the board or individual select board members who are letting the public know what their position is. So that's it, and I will wait for my turn to address water and sewer, and thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Liz?
Yeah, I'd like to see you check into the statutes, but the Windham Southeast School District Board adopted a document about how we will proceed, and it came from the Diversity and Equity Committee, and we are going to be putting that into policy so that future boards cannot get out of doing what is right and just. So and we represent people from all over, from 4 towns. So just to let you know that, other boards, I know the school board's different than the select board, but we adopted that statement unanimously. So that might be something to consider as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And I do know that that statement was forwarded to the Equity and Inclusion Committee, and I imagine that at some point we'll be taking a deep look at it and then maybe share it. And of course, the select board can find it themselves. I'm sure it's on your website, but I'm sure that we will also pass it up to them. So I sit on the Equity and Inclusion Committee as well, for anybody that has some confusion. So I can't speak for the actions that they will take, but I imagine that that would be something that would be in the queue. All right, so we have 2 more minutes on the time I gave. If anybody feels that I see a hand up, go ahead and speak.
Hi. Yeah, I think the part that I appreciated about the quote that
I'm sorry, can you share your name?
Yeah, Gail Haynes.
Thank you, Gail.
And yeah, and the part about what does all mean, and when we think about the select board taking care of everybody in the town, in my mind, that includes the safety of everyone in the town. And so I think that aspect of saying we really all belong here and everybody needs to be safe here, and to have hate speech coming into our town is a problem. And that I don't think that should be political. In my mind, it's not a politics. There's the party of hate and the party of not hate. No, nobody wants to be a party of hate. It's like, how do we make this a space for everybody, a whole community, a whole village? That phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to hold all of us and make all of our lives go better. And those of us who are white in this community and who grew up in a world infested with racism have to do a lot of work to figure this out for ourselves and to help the other white folks figure it out. But it shouldn't be a burden on the people who are not white to have to teach us that. We need to take that on. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm going to move on to select board items, and we have Next Stage Arts Project here to speak with us about water, sewer, and I know we've touched on this in the past. Karen, do you have a particular way you want to go about this?
So I did send you some reports late this afternoon, and Robin has them as well. I don't know if she shared them with Next Stage. And we did have this discussion back in, was it March, April?
Well, I would make the argument that Billy spoke with you in January.
He did. Yeah, he did. He emailed me. Yep. But we met with the select board like in April. It was brought back to the select board. So, so I'm not really sure what the discussion is other than water and sewer.
Yeah, so I can begin. My name is Keith Marks. I'm the executive director at Next Stage. So I moved here in late January, beginning of February. My understanding was that Billy had spoken with Karen about transferring us from one protocol to another, and I'm not entirely sure. I know that probably Robin has a little bit better, or Michael has a better understanding of it, that we were intended to write a letter just asking for the request. It was written, it wasn't brought up, and then I got involved when we received our first quarterly bill, which kind of resurfaced that conversation, and it we've just received our second quarter bill, and the organization has been shut since March, and we're paying, the high market rate for water and sewage. And so, these are extraordinary times, and Next Stage is doing everything in its power to stay as a vibrant community resource. And so I think we're here to sort of have a conversation around some type of action plan that helps reduce the burden on Next Stage. So Robin or Michael, I don't know if you want to step in. And
I'll jump in. Thank you. Karen, thank you for your help on this.
You're welcome.
And for sending those reports. And Next Stage, as many organizations, is a critical part of Putney. And as Keith indicated, since mid-March, it's closed to the public, and yet we have to pay close to $4,000 annually in water and sewer payments. And we'll visit the specifics in a second, but I just wanted to, underscore that these are just critical times, and we're doing whatever we can to reduce expenses to make sure we emerge from this healthy, and we're still available to the community in a number of ways. So we're revisiting the issue because it hasn't got resolved. And when we last left off, and of course nothing is simple, but when we last left off, I think Karen indicated that the select board felt, look, we can't just single you out. This may affect other people, and we need to visit this on a larger picture. And what I'm asking, almost 4 months later, is to say, look, this is the issue at hand. And what we're asking is, at minimum, can we reduce? We're happy to pay the metered amount of actual usage. That's not an issue. And I think if you break it down, and if we need to get into the specifics, Karen can jump in because she probably has a better handle on it. But Next Stage is assessed such a high bond rate. And what we're asking for is really just for some relief of 50% of relief on the bond cost while we navigate this. And what I'm concerned about is that the town has a number of issues, and this probably isn't going to be a front burner issue for them, but it is an important issue for Next Stage because it's a $4,000, line item. I'm happy to assist the town however I can. If I need to talk to the water quality division or ANR or whatever, but while you're seeking a broader solution. But I am asking that you give Next Stage some relief now, based on the building is shut to the public. Again, any usage, of course, would be paid for, and I think Michael has a few comments. I'm going to close with just, if there's any information that we can bring to the town that would prove useful to you all, happy to do that. I'm not quite sure of the overall policy, how, I know that permits get assigned based on perhaps number of seats in a building. If you have 15 cafe seats, you get assessed so many gallons for your permit to make sure that there's enough capacity, but we're past that. So again, I don't quite understand the overall policy of the town. We're asking for relief, and I'm also asking for a roadmap, as Keith mentioned. What are we looking for in terms of a timeline to address and how to proceed with resolving this problem? And Karen, before you answer, if you don't mind, or select board, of course I can ask questions anytime, but I was going to just briefly turn this over to Michael Wells. He's kind of had his eye on this for a little bit, and also has some very specific experience personally, and in the town on water and sewer. Is that okay to turn it over to Michael?
Yes. Yeah, Michael, will you please unmute if you're muted? And
hi, good evening.
Hi.
I've been working with Next Stage for a long time, since 2010, I believe. in any case, this whole, and I actually sit on the next stage board, just for clarification, and I'm a Putney resident. This thing came to my light and Billy's light, Billy Strauss, last fall, when we realized that we were paying $4,000 a year for water and sewer, but we weren't using very much, frankly. And I guess the request and the discussion revolved around paying for what you use instead of paying for a theoretical value or theoretical use, a spot in the sewage treatment plant, which is determined by the A&R, I believe, in Springfield. That happens when we put a permit in for renovating the building. And as it turns out, you know, their calculations are based on many things, but this just isn't accurate. The usage isn't there. To give you an idea, I compared next stage usage to the usage of a 4-unit apartment house on Kimball Hill. And next stage uses about 40% of the water and sewer that this 4-unit apartment house used. And next stage pays 90% of the bill. So that's just kind of a distillation comparison. The numbers there's a lot of numbers and they get a little wonky, but that just gives you an idea of where we stand next stage. And we want to pay our fair share, but well, right now, I don't know if we can pay anything. That's up to Keith Marks and Robin Stern. But we have a larger question as in the long range, can we adjust the policy, I guess, in the town of Putney so one can pay for what you use. Thank you.
And Karen, just I just want to have a footnote to that basically, you know, we understand that a portion has to be assigned to retire the debt. You know, that happens in any bonding situation. But I think Michael's point is it's so far off from, and he has a specific of the apartments of 90% a higher bill versus the, you know, the actual usage, that we would just like to see some relief. So if we had to distill it simply, what do we believe the numbers support our position, particularly when we're closed, but even when we're open. What do we need to do to help the town make a decision and give us relief?
Does anyone on the select board want to respond to this?
I unfortunately, the connection was really in and out, so I only heard bits and pieces of what Michael said, and the tail end of what Robin said was largely gone for me, so I apologize. We have been talking about this, and one thing that complicates it for us is that when commercial entities, including yourselves, have engineering done for them, which is required by the state determines the usage allocation that is necessary. And we have found, and Michael, you may, we're working through this with a number of different entities, including the co-op. I'm blanking, there was another one recently, but in which the state allocations end up being much larger than the actual usage. That creates a complicated situation for us, because if the state is telling us this is how much you're going to use and yet your actual usage doesn't match that, how do we charge appropriately? And I don't have a good answer for that. I mean, I guess in the moment, what I would suggest is that we, at a very minimum, suspend any charge of penalty or interest on an unpaid bill for next stage, while we figure out exactly how to manage this. I think that my own personal opinion is we would love to give you as much of a break as we possibly can. We also have to keep our sewer and water systems running. And it's not just the commercial entities, it's many people in town who are financially strapped in this moment. And so how do we balance that out? And I don't have a good answer for that. I didn't, because my connection was breaking up, I didn't hear any of the actual numbers versus the proposed numbers. So I really don't know what that part of the conversation was, but.
David, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. Mr. Laughlin, I think the issue was, everybody is stuck. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I want to let the select board ask questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Before.
I thought you asked.
Thank you. Or give a statement. So David, do you mind? It seemed like you had something to add. So if you do, now's the time.
This with the water and sewer to know how to do this fairly. It seems like what Josh is saying is we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place where we would like to give everybody as much of a break as we can, but at the same time, we have to keep everything running. That makes sense to me. It's not cheap, and there are people who haven't paid their bill, and there's expenses all over the place, and we're all going to have to look at how we're going to tighten our belts and where we're going to do that. Businesses, individuals, and the town. And I don't have an answer. I don't have enough history or enough information to how to speak to this well. So.
I'm curious how much wiggle room we actually have. So there was a question about turning it to metered. Josh, what are your feelings on that?
I couldn't hear, so I don't know what you are currently metered. You are, aren't you? Yes.
Just the water.
Okay, I was misunderstanding. All right.
So the water is metered.
So what's metered?
So the water,
right, which equals septic meter. So what is your water usage compared to the allocated?
So I'll have somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, Karen, the sewer, we're metered for water, and sewer is kind of measured from water coming in. If you're talking about sewer metering, they don't meter effluent. It's whatever comes in is related to how much you're using in the sewer, because it goes out through water. But the point is, the bill is combined in two pieces. It's the bond, it's the payment of the bond, and it's the metering. And as I said, there's absolutely no objection to payment for metering. But in relation to the other costs, and unlike other people who, we're all suffering during this time, but we're shut. It's not open to the public. So the use, and that was some of the reports, is basically down to zero. I mean, Karen can define the consumption better, but for as of June 22nd, it was 3, and I'm not sure if that's 3 gallons, Karen, or what that 3 represents in the actual metering, but it is almost nothing.
Right.
And so it's real. Our doors are shut. There's no, there's no income coming in, but we're also not stressing the system. And to Laura's point about, and Mr. Babbitt's point, and the rest of you, of course, you have to have your bond repaid. But I think that the actual numbers are somewhat relevant, and there's 2 pieces to it. One is a realistic usage that's assigned to a particular taxpayer. And then the other one is, well, where are you on your debt? How much wiggle room is there actually given payment that's been retiring? So you may have wiggle room to help places that are just shut down and not using your system. That's the thought.
Can I clarify, please?
Yes, please, Karen.
All right, thank you. All right, so next stage has a flat rate sewer. They're being billed for 4 units. They have 4 water bonds they're being billed for. And then they're also being charged for the amount of water that's actually being used. Okay. You are correct, Josh, that our calculations stem from the wastewater permit that the state generates. Now, I'm not sure, because you are shut down, if the state would work with you and, you know, amend that permit, although it's a process. At this point, if we change an allocation, whether it be water or sewer, let's just say we reduce you down to like 250 gallons a day, which would be 1 unit. If you ever came back, when we hope everybody comes back, when you come back, and let's just say you end up adding entities into that building, if you let those units go now, you may not be able to get them back, because right now our system is only allowed a certain amount of capacity. And at the moment, from our wastewater contractor, we have about 80 residential units that we can add to the system. That's not saying anything about commercial. So once you give up a unit or 2 units or 3 units, you may not get those back.
I'm curious, so from what I understand from what Michael said is you have never been meeting the allocation that was given to you. You've always been coming in an underwhelming way. Is that true? Did I understand that correctly? Is it possible to get reassessed by the state in spite of outside of these circumstances, just based on the history, that maybe the state made a mistake in their allocation? And
so Laura, I can see history on any account. And I pulled up just this past year, and it shows at their peak when they were, you know, before COVID, they were at about 424 gallons. So,
and how many units is that equate to meeting?
That would be 2 units.
So they're
it's 250
paying for
gallons per day. So, and then you round up to the next, you know, unit.
So they're paying for 4 units when they've never used over 2.
Well, I don't know that for sure. I'd have to go way back in history and see.
Okay.
You know, because there's a chance that they might have been using 1,000 gallons a day, but I would have to go back further than a year.
So can I suggest that it's explored through the state whether or not this could be revisited by them? And I don't know what I'm not educated enough in this system to know what that would look like for you, but is that a thing, Karen?
This is just a guess on my part. My guess is the state's going to say we use an equation based on the occupancy, the seating, the number of bathrooms, the fact that it has a kitchen, so on and so forth, and that's. And they're not. Nothing against how the state does it, but I'm pretty sure they're probably going to say that's just how it works. So I think it's up to us as the water commissioners to decide whether. You know, I mean, we've now seen, I would have to say, at least 4.
Oh, you're breaking up, Josh. Okay. But I think you were saying 4 years at that location?
5 different cases in which the state allocation does not equal actual usage.
And I agree with that statement.
So
you
as
broke
it
up
is
for me,
now,
but
you're yeah. I think it's up to us as the water commissioners to decide, because I don't think they're going to get sort of a valid answer from the state.
okay. All right.
So
with that
but
being
we've run
said,
into this in a number of different instances, which creates a problem for us in how we allocate. So
yeah. With that being said, can we get the whole history on the building? Can we get a report on the entire history of the building's usage and then revisit this at our next meeting?
Yes.
So
Okay. Do you have any other suggestions?
Can I make a statement? I think
David,
I think it's really important that we're careful. I know this is probably what you want to hear right now because you're looking for relief now, and I understand that. But I think it's really important that if we're going to change the system and keep the system working, that we change the policy throughout the system, and not for individuals. Because we start changing, giving relief like we would tax relief. We have to set up a system to do that so it's fair for everybody. And so I think that's really important. So that decision, I don't think, can be made tonight.
I agree with that, and I also think us having the history on this will help us, will help inform us going forward on that. So, Karen.
I wanted to ask Michael Maricki, is there relief for next stage for paying utility bills through the stimulus package? Whoops, he's muted.
I think he's working on it.
Okay.
He's got his working on it face on.
Oh, there he is. Back.
I didn't know that question off the top of my head, and I'd have to take a look at it. You know, one of the things we're finding is that much of the stimulus money comes with more strings attached and less flexibility than when we were in the last recession with the Obama administration. And that's why there's a lot of hope that a new administration will be more flexible with the funds that come. But sorry, I don't have an answer for you right now, but I could look into that if you want.
So can I make a suggestion of an action for this board to take in this moment?
Yes, please.
That we suspend any accrued interest or penalties on next stage's account until we have an appropriate resolution to this. And what that would mean is that if next stage does not pay their bill that's due currently, they won't accrue more debt on it. That would give us time, without penalizing them further, that would give us time to think about how to manage this appropriately. And if next stage were to choose to go ahead and pay its bill, we can always abate or credit that towards later bills if the policy made that something that was appropriate. So, and Keith, you pointed out that Billy had been in touch with us about this in January, and then it came up again in March. I guess I would also say that we should certainly consider making this retroactive to the time that it came back to the board. And I would propose that we do that as far as interest and penalties are concerned. As far as relief on the bill itself, we'd have to evaluate that when we come up with a broader policy decision.
I do just
So
want to.
is that, I'm sorry, hold on one second. Is that a motion, Josh?
I can make it a motion if people want it to be, but do you want, yeah, why? I'll make a motion that we suspend any interest and penalties due to Next Stage Arts from this day forward at this time.
From this day forward, or backdating it to when they contacted us in March?
I think we have to revisit that before I would commit to that. I think that we should look at that, but I would not include it in. I'm saying this is an action we should take from right now so they don't accrue any further debt from this moment forward, and that then we look back and
study this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there a second to that motion?
Yeah, it's seconded. I second it. Yep.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, and now it's open for discussion. And Keith, I believe you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just want to let you guys know that we are making good on our debts and paying into what we owe. So we are caught up. It's what my fear is this takes months to resolve, and next stage is bleeding a slow death. And I just want to make sure that we're not going to be in a situation in a few months down the road where we feel crippled because of the length of time for this process to take to come to some sort of resolution. It just as somebody who keeps an eye on the day-to-day income and expenses, I worry about that, but I did want to let everybody know that the next stage is paying its bill, and I'll pass this to Robin.
Can I make a comment on that? I appreciate that you're paying your bill, and that's great. And I have been, since COVID hit, been worrying every day about the whole town, and not just next stage or any one person, about how we're, as a town, going to be able to pay our bills. So we're thinking about it. We're thinking about all of it, and there's a lot. There's a lot to think about. So
okay,
I don't take it lightly.
I'm going to give this 2 more minutes till 6:30. We've spent about a half an hour on this, and although it's very important, again, respect for other people's time. So go ahead, Robin.
Thank you. Just regarding some of the legalities, at the last meeting, I believe, again, we have to revisit that, that the select board said they would adjust going backward or going forward, I guess, from April 6th or whatever the date is. Karen, we can look at that specifically. They would adjust if, or they'd abate any adjustments going forward because of the time it can take. And so, we've tried to pay the bills, but we also have been operating believing that if and when this gets resolved, there is going to be that adjustment, because that's what the select board discussed last April. So I think we're going to have to revisit that discussion or whatever. But I wanted to mention that because it has been discussed in terms of substance, not just penalties and interest. And secondly, again, there's lots for the town on its plate. I get that, and everybody comes to try to advocate. And I'm here as the vice president of the board. I'm not here as an attorney or counsel. But you advocate for your organization, and I'm happy to call the state. But I just wonder, so this is a question to the town, how you're figuring, what's your plan to address this? Because we all acknowledge there's so many inequities in terms of the allocation assignment.
Thank you, Robin. I think I would like to see the history of this particular water bill in a report, and then I would also be curious as to how other towns are handling this and how they have historically handled it. That might inform us in how we could go forward. I can't imagine that we're the only ones wrestling with this kind of issue. So
thank you.
I don't know. Karen, would you be willing to do some research for us?
Of course, I can do some research. I can call, Brattleboro and, other towns and see. Because I do know with the COVID, some towns are being a little lenient, but I think this is more than just interest and penalty. It's, definitely an allocation. So, and being fair to everyone is going to be key. So we are working on it, and I just ask for patience, and we'll try to get this together as soon as we can.
I would suggest.
Go ahead, Josh.
I'd suggest that perhaps in the interest of time tonight and the interest of other time, that maybe the water and sewer commissioners, i.e. us, meet as water and sewer commissioners, not in the context of a select board, and ask Karen for, Karen, if you bug me, I'll work with you to try and remember all the different ones that we're sort of in the same boat on and try and put them all together in a package, and then we could talk about that at a water and sewer meeting.
Sure.
a separate meeting. That would be, I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
So maybe we can set it up. Once you have some information put together, we can set up a separate meeting of the
Okay.
water commissioners. Okay.
And
Yep.
I
So,
also would like to reassure Robin that, Robin, if that's, I think all of our brains are a little fogged, but if that's the agreement we agreed to in April, we'll stand by it. I mean, we tend to be able to be quite flexible in water and sewer. We just have to be able to do the research, and that hasn't quite happened. But if we, we'll be as reasonable as we possibly can be, given the constraints of policy and so on. So, but if we told you we'd relieve it going forward, then we will when the time comes. And I also hear what you're saying, Keith, about watching it as it goes along, and we'll try not to drag it out too long.
Nothing to say.
so it's been moved and seconded to give relief for any tax or any penalties that are incurred by Next Stage from this date forward in their water bill. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you for your time on this. So, and now we are moving on to the Emerald Ash Borer. And Karen, you have a guest speaker here for this?
I do. I invited Tom Hinckley, Laura, because I wasn't sure why you asked to have it on the agenda. So I thought perhaps.
It's something.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. It's something that we've discussed in the past. I just noticed a week ago that there on the map that Westminster has popped up with having emerald ash borer as an issue, and so it was just something I was wondering. I know that we had there was a project that had cataloged trees along the main roads, and I was just curious where we were at in our ability to handle it going forward.
And we have Tom to speak on that.
Great. Hi, Tom. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Laura. Thank you very much. Yes, those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom Hinckley. I'm a member of the Putney Conservation Commission and a science professor at Landmark College. And it is the college and the commission that has been working on this project to document as many ash trees, large ash trees, as we can find along the town roads in anticipation of the invasion of the emerald ash borer, which is coming. And it will probably kill the trees, and they will fall over, and the town is going to have to deal with it in the future at some point. And we thought it would be a good idea if we had an inventory of where those trees are in an easily found format. And that's being done across the state. Virtually every town in the state of Vermont is doing this. And so we managed to get a grant to start this work last year, but we didn't quite finish the work we were doing because of COVID. It interfered with us. So we got another grant. So we're taking the work back up. At this point, the commission, with some volunteers, has documented about 70-75% of the roads in Putney that we're planning to do. And we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trees marked on a computer program that we have a professor at Landmark putting into doing the technical work to put it into a usable form that the town can then access. It contains where the trees are, but also the size of the trees and some other data as well, including the possible presence of emerald ash borer. Since most of the work was done last year, we don't have any signs of emerald ash borer at this point, but a lot of those trees were done months and months ago. But still, the trees that we've done recently haven't shown any sign of emerald ash borer. That doesn't mean it's not here, but we haven't found any. The main purpose of the project is not necessarily to find the emerald ash borer, but rather to give the town information of where the trees are that they need to keep an eye on. And maybe the town will decide in the future, as many, many towns across dozens and dozens of states and Canada and several provinces take an action to cut them down. I mean, or do something else. That's way in the future, and that those decisions will have to be made. But we want that information to be available so that then the decisions can be made. And I think that's where we are. We expect to have the roads finished early this fall, and then have the map with all the data on it, single map with all the data on it, completed also at some point this fall.
Great, thank
And I think
you.
that's,
Does anybody on the select board have any questions or comments?
Where have the closest borers been located, Tom?
well, apparently in Westminster. I wasn't aware of Westminster. I know that it's been detected in Londonderry. That was the closest I knew of. But Laura, you said that there was a report.
I was looking at a national map and it did have Westminster colored in. It could be a mistaken report. You know, I can't guarantee the validity of that. I haven't seen them myself, but
I know. I'm 99.99% sure that it probably is here and certainly will be here very soon. That's virtually certain. So
I'm sorry.
we're going to have to deal with it in the near future. So we may as well have information.
Tom?
Hi, David.
Hi, Tom. How are you? Is there anything we can do? Is there any way to control them?
Yes, you can inoculate individual trees, and that's been pretty effective. But that costs about $250 per tree. So if people want to save individual trees, they can inoculate them. If you've got a tree in your yard or one that you love and you don't want to lose, because we're going to lose them, except maybe a few that might be immune, you can do that. You can slow the spread of it by controlling firewood, because that's the main way, apparently, that it's been traveling, is through firewood. You know, so there are statewide restrictions in place about crossing state lines with firewood, but it's really hard to control that. It's coming. I mean, we had some students at Landmark doing internship work, and they did a lot of the inventorying of the trees, but they also did a lot of background work on the rest of the country. And the emerald ash borer has cut a swath from Oregon all the way over here to Vermont, every state in between. And these state and municipal entities have been doing an awful lot of things, mainly to mitigate the problem of dead trees, not to stop the spread. They can't stop the spread. All they can do is cut the trees down so they don't create a problem. That's pretty much what everybody's doing.
I hate to admit that I live in Vermont and have no idea what it costs to cut a tree down, but what is the cost comparison between cutting a tree down and inoculating one?
I imagine it's a lot cheaper to cut it down than to inoculate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very, very tree dependent. The other thing, I think, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is the inoculation only lasts for a period of time, so it's an ongoing process. Is that right?
It lasts, honestly, I don't remember the numbers, but it lasts a number of years. It does offer protection for some years. And you can re-inoculate. But I don't know a heck of a lot about that, really. It's not something I've done much.
The other thing I've heard strictly anecdotally from those in the swath that you mentioned is that it's remarkably fast, the destruction when it comes. Can you comment on that at all? I mean, from the time that we have borers here to the time that all our ashes are dead, any guess?
It would be a guess. I haven't looked at honestly, I haven't looked at the reports in a number of months. But it can happen fast. Yes, in a number of months, we can have our first sighting, and then within a year we start getting dead trees.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and that start falling down. That's why a lot of entities, including the city of Burlington, has already taken down their ash trees, and maybe other places in Vermont too.
Yep.
They're not going to wait for the trees to die and then fall over. They're just going to take them down, and that's been done by the billions. I hate to use a number like that, but billions of trees have been taken down across the country because of this.
And I think that's where my concern lies and why I asked to have this put on the agenda again, because we've discussed it several times in the past. But I am very concerned that if we don't start to make decisions around this, we may end up in a position where we're forced to make quick decisions that are costly. And so I'm hopeful that we can keep revisiting this as a select board and starting to formulate a plan with our road crew as to how we're going to approach this, because from what I'm hearing here, it is inevitable. And once it takes hold, it moves rather quickly, whether that be months or years. I don't know, but yes, David.
I have a question. The tree belongs to the landowner, not to the town, so it's kind of up to the landowner to deal with it. I know the piece of property I just bought last year, every decent ash tree that's on it is going to be lumber here in the next couple months because I'm going to take it before it dies. And anything hanging out on the road, I'm going to take down. So
can I respond to that? I'm not worried about private landowners' trees, although if they fall on our roads, we have issues. What I'm worried about is the right-of-way trees that we have some responsibility for, likely.
And that's most of the trees we're going after. I mean, most of the trees we're documenting are within just a few feet of the road. Yeah. A few are further in. But you're right. Landowners have been, and other entities have been taking the trees down while they're still useful.
Right.
As firewood or something else.
Right.
Rather than waiting for them to die.
And fall on the road.
Really sick. Right. Yeah.
Tom, and so maybe we start with an educational campaign for the community to support landowners and figure out a way that we as a community can support landowners in getting them removed or choosing to inoculate should they. I also want to add that Bonnie Hudspeth says thank you for doing all this work, Tom.
Well,
Tom,
yes,
you have said this and I missed it, but were you able in any way to prioritize trees for needing takedown? I mean, for example, the tree that's leaning towards the road versus the tree that's leaning towards the woods or the empty lot needs to be a higher priority. Were you looking at that at all or not?
Not really. No. Yeah. I mean, I personally noticed a couple of trees that maybe you ought to keep an eye on. There's one on River Road.
Would you send us a list?
There's one on River Road about a mile from Route 5 that's really leaning bad. But no, I mean, there's a lot of trees that we're documenting. But we'll have in one place, an inventory of a large percentage of the ash trees that we think pose a danger to the road and to wires. That's what we're after. We're not looking at trees that are 20 feet from the road that aren't going to fall on the road or aren't big enough to fall on the road, or we're looking for ones that are going to cause wire or road blockage.
Tom, can we access that list?
Well, the map. Well, I've sent that to Karen. Karen has the link. It's actually a web page you can go to that shows our preliminary, well, not preliminary, but the work we've done so far. Maybe 50 to 60% of it has been loaded in there at this point. Anything we've done in the past few months is not in there. I mean, we're actually since April. Anything since April has not been put in there yet, but it will be soon. And we've got 4 roads to finish. Like I said, I suspect that we'll be done with the work at some point toward the end of the year. So you could ask Karen for that, or I could send it somewhere if you give me somewhere to send it.
I'm sure Karen can
Well,
get it to us.
I would suggest, Laura, that perhaps we form a small group, which would include Karen, maybe Tom, if he was willing, and a member or more of the road crew to think about this in a more, I know Tom's work is very concrete, but in a more sort of stepwise concrete fashion from our perspective. I think we'd have to look at prioritizing trees because we're not going to take them all down right away because we aren't going to be able to. But if there are, 40 we should take down this year and 150 next year, maybe we should start thinking about that.
Yep. That's true. That will need to be done fairly soon, I think.
I'm
Tom, is that map something that would be useful on the website, on our town website? Would that?
I don't know. It's not ready. I'd be hesitant to put it up as a work in progress.
Okay.
It'll be much better.
I'm sorry.
In a couple of months, it'll be a much better map.
Yeah. Okay.
So
and I think I interrupted Josh.
I just was saying I'd be willing to participate in conversations related to that if you want me to.
Josh, this is Karen. What about the tree warden?
Good point. He's pretty limited in this moment, but maybe we should talk to him and see whether he's. Yes, but his abilities are pretty limited.
Yeah, I'm thinking fire wardens too. Maybe they might have experience with trees.
Yeah, I think we could talk about who. I mean, Brian. I think we start maybe with Brian and then spread from there.
Okay.
David's got a couple of us.
And encourage any private landowners who own ash trees that might fall on the road, who might get them while they're still good lumber, to cut down as many of them as they possibly can and reduce our workload. That would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that could be a part of an educational campaign. So what I'm hearing is that there's going to be a committee formed or a working group formed with Josh is volunteering, Karen, Tom, if he's agreeable.
He or somebody.
And potentially the tree warden, and anybody else that you feel needs to be added to that. Do we need a motion for that?
I don't think so.
Okay. I'm comfortable with that. So, great.
Thank you all very much.
I'm glad that thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Much appreciated.
Take care, everybody.
Okay. So next on our agenda is the Windham County NAACP proposed mural in Putney. And Stefan, if you would like to speak to that first. You're here to represent the NAACP, correct?
Yes.
Great.
As I apply lip chap due to all these allergies in heavy amounts. So hello everyone, you all know who I am. My name is Stefan Gillum. I am president of the Windham County NAACP, and I'm going to keep this brief as I can. We are here for a couple of different reasons, but the primary reason is the creation of some sort of a Black Lives Matter, we're going to call it a mural, but I don't know what the exact name of it is. Pretty much it's picking one of the streets that we own as a town and actually putting BLM on it. this is something that has been happening all throughout Vermont. Bennington has done it, Burlington has done it. Heck, even Rutland is commissioning a mural at this point, which is interesting because Rutland, I think, stereotypically is the most conservative among us politically in the state, or at least right around that vein. Those who have not done this are now flying flags. We also see a, wow, the screen keeps moving. We also see a large cultural shift in the country with most businesses, organizations, whether they're governmental and or small business, also adopting a pro Black Lives Matter, not only agenda, but stance that is public. And these are both in the private and public sector, as well as government, which is why you have towns and places that own these roads allowing for replacement of these murals. So the reason why we want this done is because, as we all know, there was a plethora of extremely hateful, what I'm going to call graffiti, splattered around. They now say 5 different areas in Windham County, Putney being one of the main areas where we've seen some of the biggest graffiti, and also people trying to cover up that graffiti. Which I do think shows the community's willingness to engage around the conversation in some way. I'm bringing it to you because I believe it's the town's responsibility, honestly, to represent all of its people, not only through policy, but also through culture and through public demand. And right now, we are having what I'd like to call the court of public opinion, pretty much the country shift. And I think we need to be shifting with them. I also think that represents a lot of who we stand, what we stand for as a county, and also what it seems like most Putney citizens stand for, rather they're allowed to express it or not, or they feel comfortable expressing it or not, of their own fruition. Also, there have been a number of instances in Putney, which I'm sure you've all heard about, of people being followed, of a very unfriendly, racist language being used, xenophobic language being used, for the folks who have been followed, especially around the intersection of COVID and race, and how that's played out within the confines of our town. There has also been incidences throughout Windham County and also in Putney of bad acting within law enforcement. And I can personally attest to these because when I worked at Landmark, a lot of my students that I had to oversee dealt with this. All of them were Black, and they were all pulled over and mistreated by the police on a regular basis, even though the town, I don't think, heard about much of it because there seemed to have been a separation between town politics and what happened on the campus. Although the campus does house thousands of people, it's almost another Putney in its own way. And on top of that, we have hateful signs. So I believe that this is a time for action for us, and this is not a time for inaction. And so what that means, starting off, would be something like a mural, right? And saying this is what we want as a town and commissioning it. I know that we can't use state-owned roads. That just doesn't seem wise, in my opinion, and it seems like it'd be getting into the weeds. But I do think there are things that we can do as a town. I also want to address the conspiracies around the graffiti, because I would like to point out the historical precedent does not support the conspiracy that Black Lives Matter supporters or any other activist, civil rights person, justice person would do something like this. There actually was a report that came out today that was reported by The Hill. The Hill is a nationally acclaimed reporting source that is bipartisan, by the way. It was created by not only progressives but also conservatives, and they actually, within their report today, or I should say their pseudo report, I haven't read all of it yet, said that white supremacists are the main bad actors when it comes to the creation of these types of graffiti and these types of signs of hate. So I would like to just dispel that notion that someone in the justice community would do this. It's not within our tactic range. And honestly, I have never in my entire life seen a black person do that, or a brown person do that, or a white ally. And I'm coming from St. Louis. And as we all know, St. Louis is wrought with oppression, racism, and also bad actors that are police officers. I mean, they shut down Jennings, they shut down the police department there in St. Louis in a large part. So with that being said, I also want to add that this is, and I'm expecting that people might say, and not by people, I don't mean the select board, just people, might say that we have to represent, or we have to think about all members of our town. But as a lot of those businesses have already shown at this point, and a lot of the other town governments that we see acting have already shown, that in order for us to think about all citizens of our town, we have to speak up for those who are the most marginalized right now. And those are our Black and brown citizens, which had to wake up to signs of hate. It's been interesting to me, some of the response that I've seen from a lot of my white colleagues around Windham County, and the shock that they're going through and having to deal with this sort of hate. And I tell them all that I feel bad for your shock, but just know that, you know, Black people have been waking up with swastikas and signs of hate on their lawns, in their roads, behind their houses for several generations, much past my lifetime and my grandparents' lifetime to boot that. And so I think it's time for us to stand up as a community. I think there are other things that we could be doing as well. And we could talk about that later, or maybe here if we have time. But I want to say that this is a time for the majority to be moving forward on this. And so what I'm hoping to see out of this meeting today is actual action and actual movement. And what I'm hoping not to see is non-action and non-movement. I would also say that when it comes to our education, I think Josh brought this up about education. I agree. It is time for there to be more intentional education for all community members, but especially people who held power in our government, local government, municipal government, and state government. The state is already committing to that. They've got a lot of diversity training set up. Heck, even the police departments in a lot of ways are trying to commit to that. And so I'm hoping that, you know, our local governments are going to commit to that too, since they are the most grassroots. And it seems like, from what I'm hearing from both of you, that that is sort of where y'all stand anyway, as far as morals go. So with that, I want to yield my time, and I invite any questions or any further discussion about this matter. But I would also say that for far too long, the onus has been put on Black people and brown people. And we've taken care of ourselves for a long time, despite the extreme spider web of bureaucracy that was not created for our benefit. And I believe that it's time for men and women like you three to use your spheres of influence and your structural power to create an actual ecosystem that works for everyone, because that is the purpose of government. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. It was pointed out to me recently that those that don't study these matters or live in a world of activism don't always understand the terminology that is used. And so, just for clarity, could you explain what bad actors are?
Yes, and bad actors, it's so funny, actually comes from my degree, my master's degree in conflict resolution and mediation, but it's also an international degree term. So bad actors just means someone within a system that has been allowed through their structural power to behave in a way that is unbecoming and hard to check. So for example, on the global stage, we might have a bad actor. Let's just pick a random country and say, I don't know, Russia, right? We seem to have a lot of problems with Russia. So we see them in our government as a bad actor, because what they do is directly not in our best interest, but we don't have the way our governmental structure is set up globally, we don't have a lot of room to necessarily check them on it. So they're just a bad actor and they're okay with that. And we have a lot of people in our police systems, we have a lot of people in our government systems who are extreme bad actors, and the system does allow that. And it takes people being bold and courageous to step up and disallow that, or we're going to get nowhere.
Thanks. Does the select board have any questions or comments? Josh, I see your mouth moving, but I can't hear you.
I'm wondering, Stefan, if we were to want to do something like this, sources of funding.
I'm not 100% sure yet about sources of funding, but there's been so many models around the town that around the state, that I'm sure that we could figure that out fairly easily. What I'm talking about literally is just a matter of painting. So it's literally just getting a whole bunch of buckets of orange paint. I mean, it could probably be done in under $200, honestly. And that might be betting sort of high, right? If we find a decently traversed street and use really high quality paint, which we can find out what Burlington used, for example, and create the BLM sign, then I think we could get community to come out and do it, similar to how they came out to the visual. 150 folks showed up. That's what happened in Burlington as well. And so they showed up and everybody just kind of came together. It was kind of a cool moment. People took pictures together and they had a lot of solidarity building. That was also a time where people who maybe were in elected positions or appointed positions got to come out and show support, just on their own behalf, to come out and paint alongside people. And pretty much you just painted the words Black Lives Matter. And I think it's a wonderful testament, because as you have people in your community who might feel excluded sometimes, traversing these roads, for them to see something like that would be wonderful. And we don't talk as much about the impact of art, right? I mean, our equity committee does a lot around structural change, which being a member of the NAACP, that's our wheelhouse, and I 100% agree with that. But and maybe I think that Keith, well, he was on here, he might have jumped off, I don't see his name, but Keith, I think in next stage, yeah, he's gone, could be, oh darn. Well, anyway, he could have been a good example of the power of art, because I think that's a purely art, it's all they do.
David, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, so you're talking about, just to be clear about this, you're talking about actually painting on the tar, on the road surface itself. You're not putting up a sign or doing a mural on a building. I'm trying to get a picture in my head of what it is you have in mind, where you might want to put it, how big it might be, what it might look like.
So I'm imagining that it would probably be just orange, so we're going to go off the model that everyone else has been using. So if you look at Burlington, or if you look at, oh, I just forgot the name I brought up. I think Bennington has a smaller one. I'm not sure. There's an actual mural, but Burlington's is an actual Black Lives Matter sign. Words that are spelled out, and it goes across the street. It's pretty big, but it's not like tacky. It's actually pretty aesthetically pleasing once you get it all done. And if you want to look for resources, just look at the one that Burlington did. And you can see exactly what I'm envisioning. It's super simple and pretty straightforward. It's just Black Lives Matter written out in probably orange. I don't know if Putney, if we do it, if they want to take their own, Putney spin on it, but but at the end of the day, it's just going to be a pretty simple project. I think it could probably be done in a day or two, depending on the size of the road.
So another question that comes to mind, we have a sign ordinance. Is this the kind of thing that falls under the sign ordinance, Karen?
So sign is a sign, whether it's on a building, hanging from a post or on a road.
I think we could probably, look at somewhere like, because I'm sure Burlington has sign ordinances, obviously the state, look at what the avenues are for, I'm guessing, I mean, it's our ordinance as a town. We as the board can probably opt to override that ordinance for, I think that would be one question though. First would be, we should probably explore the legalities of this. And as a model, ask other towns who have done it to see what the legal questions involved are, and then go from there. Do you have
Are there
any
other questions here?
Yeah, I would say when is your next meeting, just so I can make sure. I'm here.
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
So maybe we could figure it out, the legality part, within a week, and maybe Laura can email it to me. If that's okay. And then by the time we come back to our next meeting, we could discuss it and maybe try to roll something out by then. Does that sound reasonable?
So I imagine Karen would be checking in with other towns, and our sign ordinance is pretty easy to pull up. Karen, if I were to get you his email address, could you loop us in on an email once you have some of that research done? I'm curious, what legalities are we looking into? Like, what are the legal concerns here?
Sounds like a keyboard
Somebody's typing
in the background, if you want.
Yeah.
I mean, the question would be a sign ordinance, which is a question for us. If we've created a sign ordinance, do we have the right to override it for something like this? And then I don't know. I just think it's a question we would need to ask whether there are legal implications, and I don't honestly know what those would be.
And if other towns have done this before, then they must have run into it. So we could, I'm sure, learn something from talking to them, right?
I think Burlington would be the best place to start, because theirs is the model that I'm using. But I will say that Washington, D.C., LA, I mean, you name it, every major city, a lot of smaller cities are doing it. But in Vermont, I would say that just because we're a smaller town doesn't mean that we should exclude ourselves from that act of solidarity.
No.
So,
yeah, and I agree with you.
I just was messaged our sign ordinance, and let's see, real quick. It looks like you can. A sign shall mean a sign placed on the grounds of the property, not attached to a building.
I think, can I suggest we just visit this? Sorry, Laura, I'm not trying to.
Yeah, no, it just doesn't look like our sign ordinance really does cover painting on the road. It doesn't look like it's a.
No, I wouldn't think it necessarily. No, I guess the legal question is, if we were to go ahead and do this, could somebody sue us? And I don't know the answer to that. And if so, is that a risk we're willing and happy to take? I don't know the answer to that either. But I think that other places, I'm sure, for example, the Black Lives Matter painting in New York City in front of Trump Tower, I can almost guarantee that Trump has sued the city of New York, and we don't know what's going on with that. But I know that may sound a little silly to make that comparison in our town, but at the same time, if we have an obligation, if we are potentially opening ourselves up to any sort of legal action, we have an obligation to at least know that going in.
It also looks like, and I should have been more familiar with the sign ordinance, I apologize for not coming into this as educated as I should be, but it also looks like you apply for a sign permit.
Yeah.
So, and then Karen, as the town manager, would decide whether or not it meets the ordinance's, whether or not it conforms to the ordinance's requirements. So, again, it doesn't seem like paint on a road falls underneath the sign ordinance language.
Can I also add, Laura?
Mm-hmm.
So location, we would need to know that. Size, would need to know that. And I'm not 100% sure that I'll be in. So I'm waiting for the tax rate to come from the state education department. And I'm hoping that tax bills will be generated and mailed out by Monday next week. So that right there is my priority. And as the select board also knows, I'm also dealing with some other things internally that take precedent right now. Not that I'm going to have to do a little research on my own anyway, just to be sure, like Josh stated, legality. You know, paint on the road may not be a big thing, but if it's a bright orange and there's no lighting, somebody gets in an accident, that could be a problem, you know, and I don't believe the select board wants to be liable for something like that. How long would the sign stay up, Stefan?
Well, I will add, I've seen them done in different colors, by the way. I understand that what you brought up is a good point, and I think that I've seen some places do them in black, or in other signs that are maybe colors that are easier on the eye. I would imagine this staying up probably as long as most other counties or cities have done it. It seems like people have been leaving it up through the summer, or maybe even somewhat through the fall. I mean, I think being paint, it will probably start to erode in Vermont pretty quickly once our winter hits. And if the winter is anything like it was last winter, it'll be hard to see it anyway. Anyway, when it comes out of that, it'll be a whole hot mess, and it'd be probably pretty easy to remove. But I really just think it's the act of doing it and having it up for a while and just standing in solidarity with our citizens who just don't have much of a voice right now. So it shows that not only are we doing things internally like training, which I hope that we do at some point with all of the, everybody, which actually can be pretty fun. I just gave a couple of trainings myself and people seem to really enjoy them. But also it shows that there's an external support so that we know, like in times of crisis, when there is overt racism and we have a racist president, too, that like there are places that actually stand with their citizens.
I'd like to open this up to, we have a few folks that have made comments in the chat, and I'd like to open it up to them. And Gail Haynes says that she looks forward to seeing this proposal move forward and unfortunately is late to another meeting. And before I open it up, I just want to make sure that the select board saw the letters that were sent to us by a few citizens today, declaring support for the Equity and Inclusion Committee and this proposition. And I think that has come from the recent events.
I have not
would
seen.
anybody? Karen forwarded those to all of us.
Yes.
Throughout the day, so it may be something they came in today and yesterday evening, and would anybody from the public like to comment? I see Mark's hand up.
Yeah, just I have to go do a program with students in a little bit, but I'm Mark Thurman. I live in Putney. Been here for seven years. Been a student in this community, and now I work for the college at Landmark College. And I think this is important because I work with students in the diversity centers, and we're talking about women, we're talking about the LGBTQ community, we're talking about students of color. And I think we need to really look at it like, this is about, these young kids who are trying to figure out how to connect and how to unite. And if they can't see us figure that out and us stand up when things go wrong or when people are being treated wrongly, if they don't see us act on that, then we're not sending a good message. And, you know, what I tell these students is if something's wrong, you speak up about it and you do something about it. So I'm just hoping that we do something about this. We can't just let it just sit there and not doing anything. So even if we can't get, if you're like, because of all these rules, we can't have Black Lives Matter on the road, okay, all right, we can't do that, but what can we do? So I think we need to have the what can we do? What can we do? We're not jumping through hoops and we're not asking 10,000 questions, and no disrespect about anything, but as a person who lives here, who walks down to the general store to get something to eat, who goes to the Putney diner, you know, just, I live here. So if I'm telling my kids, these kids that look up to me and say, hey, you know, when things happen, do you stand up? Do you say something? Yes. Do you do something? Yes. So I think we're all in the position right now to do something, no matter the color you are, no matter the gender you are. Right now, it's all about us coming together because that's why I live here, because we're a community and we care about one another and we help each other. And I've seen that while living here. So I'm only wishing to see the same thing happen for this. And if something else happens, we do the same thing. It's all about us coming together. We're all different. All of us are. If you look at the screen, you can see we all look different. We all talk different. But one thing is, when something happens within the community, we're supposed to have each other's backs. So right now, doing this is just showing that, hey, I got your back. You're my neighbor. I'm looking out for you. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what gender you are. We're neighbors. So let's do something. So if we can't get it on the street, let's figure out something because it's the right thing to do. And that's all I really wanted to say. I do have to go. It's been great.
Thank you, Mark.
Good to see you. Can I just add, Laura, too, that this is a process of transcendence, right? People want us to break things, start yelling, tearing up stuff. And I think that this is a wonderful opportunity to transcend a lot of that response with something that is an act of solidarity. So I agree with what you're saying, Mark. That's beautifully said.
Thank you.
I agree, Mark. Yeah, I want to say that we as the select board have obligations to do things in a way, you know, I'd love to say go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
But I can't do that without knowing what the implications are because that's my job, what the implications are. So, I agree with Mark's sentiment that if we can't do it on the road, which I don't think or know that we can't, but that we should figure out how to do it somehow, and that we can participate that in other ways, but it's our obligation to know what the legalities are. So.
Thanks, Josh. I'm going to give this 10 more minutes for people to comment, and then we're going to have to close this discussion out. Again, I recognize that this is really important, and we still have more on our agenda that we have to get through. So we do have several people that are loaded in here that wanted to make comments. I see Mike trying to comment, Clee, Gail had to leave, Billy, and Izzy, if you, in that order, want to speak. And then if anybody else wants to, just type in the comment, and hopefully we can get through everybody's responses very quickly.
Laura, there's a couple of mics. Did you mean Mike Murwicki?
Mike Murwicki, yes, sorry.
Thank you. I want to speak in favor of this, and I also understand that there are considerations that the town needs to exercise due diligence over. And I know Karen's busy too, and what I'd like to offer, I'd be willing to look into this from the legal standpoint. I can talk to Connor Casey, who's on the select board in Montpelier, who just went through this, and it wasn't without some controversy, but I think they went through it, and I know that they did a big sign on the road right across from the State House, and the next day it was defaced, but it's been taken over again. And I especially want to talk to Connor because Connor grew up in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and came to this country as a result of having worked on the plan between the Protestants and the Catholics there, and then got hired to do some work in this country. And he certainly is no stranger to conflict, and he's brought conflict resolution in his work for unions here. And I think he may be able to also help us look at how to deal with the controversy that might arise. And if the select board's willing, and Karen, I'd be willing to take this on and maybe take some of the load off your plate, because I know it's a busy time for you, and I don't want to suggest something happen without willing to help pull my weight here.
I
Thank you, Mike.
appreciate your offer, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks. Does Clee, would Clee like to speak?
I don't know whether Chrissy Lee is Clee, but
Oh, maybe Chrissy Lee. Sorry.
it's unstable, so I'm unable to speak. But Ledley
yeah.
Laughlin would like to speak.
Okay. So we had, I know that, oh, Chrissy Lee. Okay, I see that now. Yes, Ledley. Oh, and there were people before you, but go ahead, Ledley. Sorry, this is hard to navigate. Oh, Ledley left. Okay. Bonnie and Jamie would like to speak.
I didn't know Chrissy was going to be able to be with us, and so I'll share a sentence or two from her letter that she sent you, and say that I'm Jamie Comtois. I live here in Putney, but I wanted to read 2 lines from Chrissy Lee's letter. She says, "I'm writing to express my support for the proposed Black Lives Matter mural in Putney and the ongoing work of the town's Equity and Inclusion Committee." There's much more to the letter, but I'm going to be brief. So it says, "The recent anti-BLM graffiti on Main Street was deeply upsetting and alarming. And while it was beautiful to see so many people come out for the solidarity vigil and the town take swift action to cover up the graffiti, I hope that is not the extent of our collective response. This is an important moment and opportunity for the town of Putney and the select board to take action and to stand in solidarity with and defense of BIPOC families, and that is Black, Indigenous, and people of color families, residents, and workers, and to make a public commitment of resources and energy to anti-racist actions and training. The proposed mural is not a panacea, but it can be a powerful and public affirmation of shared values, unity, and vision of our community leaders. Further, it is a signal to BIPOC living and working in our community, of which Chrissy Lee has identified in the letter that she is a second-generation Korean American who's raising her children here."
Thank you. Karen was next on the list. If Karen would like to speak. Karen Gutentag.
Sure. I guess I would just briefly say I'm really encouraged by the commitment that I'm hearing to find a way, one way or another, to create some sort of artwork and visual representation and to work around restrictions in order to be literally creative. I'd love to also find a way to involve people of all generations in whatever artwork is created, if we can ultimately, in confidence that we can get this done, if we can keep an eye on including some of the kids of the community in important roles and really inviting and being intentional about getting as much community participation and representation as possible. I think that would be optimal, but it has my strong support and I'm willing to volunteer. I can't bring any expertise around the legal side of the maneuvering, but in terms of the rest of the logistics, I'd be happy to support in whatever way I can.
Thank you. So we have Ledley and Anne. Ledley, you can go first. We have 4 minutes left. So if you could each keep it to 2 minutes.
Sure, I'll just be quick. I'm Ledley. I'm a high schooler at the Putney School. It sounds like we can figure out the legal aspect of this pretty quickly in the next week. And I think it would also be important to see, I think the question of funds was raised. And I think it would be actually really easy to get funds for this. And maybe we could set up a group of people who could stay in touch about how to think about how those funds can be raised so that we can come to next week's meeting with the legal aspect figured out and also knowing that we can raise those funds.
Thank you, Ledley.
And also,
Okay.
that group would also think about funds for future projects. So not only this mural, but be a resource for other action steps.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Anne?
I wasn't sure you'd get to me, so I decided to type it in the chat. I'm just here to offer a little reassurance for the select board. Our attorneys at BUH District Number 6 told us we would be facing all manner of legal consequences for raising the Black Lives Matter flag. 2 years later, it's still there, and no one has taken any legal action against us. This is important. Someone reached out to hurt our residents of color. Our response cannot be to ignore it. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have 2 minutes left, so I'm just going to read real quickly. And Izzy, are you still here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Izzy. I'm a resident of Guilford, but I attended the Putney School and feel a connection to the Putney community. I want to echo what Stephen Gillum and Ledley said about how I think it would be important before the next meeting to look into the legalities of this and look into how other towns have done this, since clearly there's not anything at a state or national level that would prevent this from happening, since it's happened in other places around the state. And to come up with a clear answer as to whether or not this is possible and the legal implications. And if it's for some reason isn't possible, to come up with like a few clear options to bring to the table about what to do. Yeah, I think having a quick response to this is really important, just to show solidarity and show that we're not going to let some kind of bureaucratic things get in the way of standing in support of our neighbors. And I'm also willing to help paint and also to donate materials or money or time or whatever is useful.
Thank you so much. Nader Hashim, who is one of our local representatives, said, I have to go in a second for family reasons, but I'd like to say I strongly support this and I appreciate the viewpoints that have been shared so far. Our demographics are shifting, and so too is the political landscape. We should be able to show we can come together to do this. Thank you all. So our time for public comment is up. It sounds like, yes.
So my one sentence just around payment is that the NAACP, our branch, is not a rich branch, but we're not a poor branch either. And so if it stays within a couple $100s, then we are happy. I'm happy to bring that up with our executive committee, and I'm sure we can make a pretty decent contribution to the project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it doesn't sound like we're going to take any action on this tonight, but we are going to revisit it at our next meeting once we have all the information gathered. Mike Morawicki is going to help gather information. Many people that are in this conversation have offered to help with fundraising and organizing. I will try to capture names on that, or if you can reach out to me and just shoot me an email letting me know that that's something you're interested in, so we have that in a nice central place should we be able to move forward with this or something else. And then the only other thing I'm going to add is that I appreciate the I appreciate the willingness to explore this and the support of this. And I would add that we as a town, through our Equity and Inclusion Committee, really should start moving, I think, at a more rapid pace on bias training and supporting all of our staff throughout our community that works for the town in ensuring that they have the same commitment that we do towards these issues, or at least the same understanding. So, all right. So thank you all that gave your time to this, and we are going to move on to the town manager's report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, my email. That's helpful, Ledley. I can't type into this. It's llchapman@yahoo.com. And it can be found on the town website. Sometimes navigating these conversations is so hard.
Sure.
And I don't even mean the complexity of the conversation we just navigated. I mean the computer technology.
Izzy
Yeah.
just put it, I think
Yeah,
you only have one L at the beginning, don't you, Laura?
It's 2. No, it's 2 for this one. Depends on
All right.
which email of mine you're using, but this one it's 2.
Okay. So that looks right, what Izzy
That
posted?
is, she got it perfectly. Thank you, Izzy.
They, I believe, sorry.
Are we ready?
We are ready.
All right, the only thing I have under town manager's report is the tax sale has been set for August 27th, 9 a.m. at the fire department.
Okay.
I do have a list. Oh, hold on a minute. So at the moment, we have 5 properties, and the total amount owed right now is $55,250.90. Those figures are going to change because they're doing legal notices in the newspaper, and they have to do 3 consecutive weeks prior to the tax sale. So we'll see what happens. There are 2 properties that were on the list from last year. The others are new.
Properties that were on the list from last year that went to tax sale and didn't sell, is that correct, Karen?
That is correct, Josh, yes. So, I did have a development review board meeting last night at the fire station. So there were 6 members of the board, including myself, and about 15 people showed up, which I did not expect, but I spaced the room out nicely so there was at least 6 feet, from each person. And if somebody came as a family unit, they sat together, but everyone wore their mask, and it worked out fine. Development Review Board seems to work better together in person with the applicants.
That makes sense.
I'm sure.
So that list, 5 properties, seems small compared to last year. Is that, am I remembering correctly? And that figure.
Because, we sold 2 properties last year.
Right.
So, fingers crossed, there's at least 2 or 3 that I'd like to see gone, but we'll see what happens. There might be a point too, with 2 of the properties. If the taxes continue to accrue another year, they might be people may not be interested. I have one piece of property at 14,000 at this point, and it's on Town Line Road. There's 2 lots up there. It can be developed, but you know, it has to be cleaned up, you know, and it's, you know, I think as a town, we're going to have to look at that, because if that delinquent tax keeps building, it's going to get so far out of reach that anyone would potentially bid on it.
So what are our options in a situation like that? What can we do?
Well, we can bid on it ourselves if the property is going to be usable. But if we have to clean it up, you know, if it has junk cars, you know, an old mobile home, you know, we have to look at both sides, David. You know, is it cost effective,
right,
you know, for us to purchase that and try to resell it later?
There was a couple of properties up there that had some wetland issues with them too, wasn't there? I don't know if this is those properties, and I'll need to know if they are, but there was other stuff that we might think about too.
So we would have to look, yes.
Right.
We'd have to look at everything, you know. Can it be developed? What's on there now? Is there wetlands? Does it have, you know, a well and septic? You know, because that's an asset right there. But, you know, basically anytime you bid on something, it's, you know, it's at risk because you're not getting an appraisal. You're not getting an inspection. So you're buying it as is.
Right. So we have a month, basically. We have a month before the sale.
August, yep.
There's definitely precedent for us purchasing properties as well as ultimately just taking them off the tax rolls. And I honestly don't know the mechanisms. It might be worth, Karen, just asking Larry or finding where the parameters of that are located in statute so that we can just know the answers to those questions. Because I think, David, the Taylor Road property that we have sold, Karen, or have not? I think it was on Taylor.
Sold, but I have 2 people that are still interested.
My recollection is that that was a property that we ended up, I can't remember how it worked, but essentially taking off the tax rolls a period of time ago because it was just sitting there accumulating debt and it wasn't doing anybody any good. So, so we sat on it, and now it has the value of putting it back on the tax roll and not a whole lot more value than that. But we're definitely able to do it, but I don't remember the mechanisms appropriately. So.
And we're at the point now where the debt's gone on long enough that we can move on it that way. We could either bid on it or effectively absorb it, take it off the tax rolls, and it becomes ours. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, if we buy it and then nobody reclaims it, then it becomes ours. But then we are effectively taking it off the tax roll. So it may be that the only appropriate way to do that in this instance is to in fact buy it. But that's what I'm not sure about. What the other means might be.
My question, I guess, more specifically was, it doesn't come to a point after a certain number of years in accrued tax debt that it just becomes the property of the town of Putney. We have to go through some mechanism to get to own it.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, but if we buy it, we're buying it from ourselves for all practical purposes. So where we run into, you know, it's the question of who's paying. If we buy it, yeah. Anyway, we should have Larry. We should have Larry explain it.
Yeah. Hey, David, come to the tax sale and you can ask questions.
If I have time, I will. That would be wonderful.
No, seriously, it's a good experience.
It's interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
I hear you.
So that's the only item I put on the town manager's agenda. I mean,
Great.
yeah.
All right, warrants?
I'd like to make a motion to approve and execute the warrants as presented upon completion of review.
I second that.
Great. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Payroll warrant dated July 31st, 2020 in the amount of $15,394.09.
Are there any questions about that?
I think we lost Josh.
No, I'm here. I'm
All right.
Or just frozen?
I'm just dozing. Sorry. No, I was trying to look at the warrants at the same time, but I can't seem to open a second screen right now. So,
all right.
Come back.
So Sarah Wiles is a new employee at the library. If you don't recognize her name.
I just saw at the bottom there. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Moving forward, accounts payable, July 18th through July 31st, 2020, in the amount of $31,743.85.
What did we pay Brian individually for?
That was for his clothing allowance.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Vision service plan? What is that?
Is that the eye plan for staff?
Yep.
The healthcare? Okay.
Yes.
What's Canopy LLC? It's Canopy with a K.
Oh, let me see what that is.
That's the library thing?
Oh, that's a library. Yeah, it's a library.
The streaming thing.
Yep.
Oh, that's right.
And the Wex Bank payment is for?
The gas cards for the
That's
equipment.
right. Yep, thanks. Forgot that.
That's okay. So of course, July 1st, any contractual contracts that we have, like Windham County Sheriff's, so those have all increased a little bit. Rescue is going to increase a little bit starting this month.
What's the GOVO governor's office? $1,155. What's that?
That is our website. So we get an annual fee, and we get, customer service and IT help and that kind of stuff. And to have our website, that's about what it costs every year.
I can come in and sign this tomorrow morning, but I will probably be in before you are. So will it be in my mailbox by then, or should I just do it on my way back through town in the afternoon?
Alyssa, do we have copies in her mailbox already?
Yes, they're already in there.
All right.
Oh, you're so good. Okay, great. Are there any other questions on the warrants?
Nope.
You're good? All right. So do we have any other business?
God, I hope not.
You're not muted, Alyssa.
I know, but it's you
all
guys.
right, then we are having an executive session?
Yes.
under Title I, V.S.A. Do you want to make the motion, Josh?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we enter executive session for whatever the appropriate title is to have a discussion about personnel.
Okay. And my understanding is we will have a decision at the end?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So, okay. David, I saw you second that. Okay. Thanks. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So you're going to, and we're inviting Karen in. We forgot that piece, but we're inviting you in, Karen.
Okay.
So the select board left executive session and reports with great regret that we are accepting the resignation of Deb Stetson, who has worked in the Putney Public Library for many years, and we are exceptionally grateful for her service to our community, and hope that her life going forward is a joyous and wonderful one. And thank you for your time, Deb.
Yeah, thank you.
Deb.
Thank you, Deb.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Our next meeting date is August 13th, 2020. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's 8:31, Karen.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you all.